Next speaker this evening, Wilson Robertson, and you have Ann Robertson giving time. I see her, and also Tim Smith Sr. And, sir, just because of the number of speakers, we're 1 minute per speaker, so 3 minutes total.
I can do it in 3 minutes.
Right
I just want to say hello, thank you. Wilson Robertson, 3057 Knotty Pine Drive. I know it's a political season, and you're going to probably think this is all politics. Let me tell you, nobody coerced me to say anything. Nobody even asked me to say anything. I started watching. I heard Jeff Burgosh make his comments. Started reading the newspaper, and I got thinking about it. I look back on the minutes of October 3rd, 5 years ago nearly, and I made the motion, and we voted unanimously to buy this property. There was two... Almost 5 years ago, we made a...
I guess we've made the jump. We've made the jump. You're on this topic. Yeah, we're on 4. Please, yeah.
Oh, well,
we'll come back.
I want to give Commissioner Robertson his full time, but we were on a different topic, so I want to make sure we handle all the pieces we get before.
Coreyfield Bridge.
We were talking the Corey Road Bridge. We were on the Corey Road Bridge.
Yeah, okay.
I don't have
gentlemen.
any
That's my.
I kept wondering what you voted on.
I don't have any interest in the bridge.
No. We finished the item. Remember, we had voted for the entire balance, but we had a speaker on one, so we moved forward to discussion.
Exactly, but we still haven't gone to the other. We've only done.
No. I jumped to discussion 4 because I thought that was what we were doing.
Okay. I thought we were going the other way. I'm sorry.
We're coming back. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Are we
Wilson, start again.
I know I signed up.
I'm sorry about that.
We're on 4.
That's all right. I get about 10 minutes now since I got interrupted. Okay.
No, we vote on them. We're going to come back to those. We're on
Start my clock over so I can get wound up. This to me, my wife's in the audience, and I would never state a mistruth with her in here. She would correct me on it later. I don't lie. I was not interested whatsoever in the access to the property over on Perdita Key until I started reading about it in the paper. Heard Commissioner Burgosh. I happened to be watching a meeting because I was still following my issue in Cantonment, or I wouldn't have been watching. Trust me, I got many more things I'd like to do than to watch TV with y'all up there, and especially with me standing up here. So it's not that I don't like you. I just don't want to spend my time watching you after 20 years. But honest to goodness, I started looking. The minutes are here 5 years ago where I made the motion that we buy this. And it is clearly stated in here that it is 25% for the public access and 75% for conservation of the beach mouse. And there's no 25% being used by the public. I don't go out there. I didn't even realize it. I sat there 3 years after we bought this property. I assumed the commissioner of that district was doing his job. I wasn't worried about it. Don't go out there. Don't use Perdita Key. Live at Marcus Point. Got a big old swimming pool, so I don't go to the beach. Don't serve. I sold my jet ski when I sold my condo over in Pisco Beach. So all I'm saying is, I just feel like if we passed a motion 5 years ago to spend $3-point-something million of taxpayers' money, I know some of it was federal, but we all pay federal, and a lot of it was local, a mixture of several different buckets. And yet, for $110,000, I heard you say this morning, that you could probably have public access to that beach. Don't let this just be political. All the politics has been said enough. If there's any damage to be done, if there's any hurt about all this, it's done happened. Let's make a real good choice on behalf of the citizens of Escambia County that over $3 million of tax dollars went into this property. And I want to say, if I got time, how much time do I have left?
50 seconds. You're good.
All right. I want to read verbatim, so I wrote it down. I was looking at a video 3 months ago, and it happened to be Commissioner Underhill speaking. I'm assuming he was appealing for more money, but it says, I live on the beach, on the island. I have access to the water. Tourists always have access to the water when they're in a condo. The one group of equity holders that need our protection are the citizens that do not live on the water or rent a condo. He said, your constituents are the one I'm looking out for. Now, it might have been to buy more waterfront property that he was appealing to, but why do you need to buy a lot more if you're not even using what you have? Do the right thing and open that beach.
Thank you. Next up.
I just want to...
Yes. Commissioner Robinson, you're recognized.
I just wanted to apologize, Wilson, when at public forum when you said something happened, you didn't realize what was going on. I'm up on the dais and I didn't realize which one we were on, so I apologize for interrupting you.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Randy Cudd, and you have Ilan Dehan giving you time. Ilan?
Should have two.
Yes, and Rob Wood. Rob Wood? Okay, there you go. All right, you'll have 3 minutes. You're recognized.
All right, Randy Cudd, 11151 Gulf Beach Highway. I noticed earlier y'all passed something that actually gives the dogs on Pensacola Beach more public beach than we've got it in Perdido. Gentlemen, I come before you for the third time concerned about the lack of action on public beach access number 4, the Sundown. Commissioner Underhill has labeled this a political hit job. Commissioner Robinson has expressed concern in the same direction, and I can understand that. There's very little doubt that this has turned political, but that's not the original intent for any of this. It has become political because it has not been acted upon for the entire 4 years that D2 has been sitting in that chair. Had D2 even made the slightest effort to open this beach and access to the public, this would be a moot point. Behind me, and to the left for the most part, is a sea of red. That sea of red is what is political. Commissioner Underhill, by broadcasting a call to arms in an email, sent out to all of his campaign supporters asking that they wear red and come to this meeting. There's your politics, not me. I'm here for the people. We're here for all the citizens of Escambia County. This is not about politics. This is about the beach. We stand before you and request you take some type of action on this situation. We are here to open the beach. That's it. If this commission would at least consider directing staff to let us clean the parking lot area to ascertain the real cost of what it's going to take to repair it, maybe put up the split rail fence to protect the beach mouse habitat, that would be a good start. That's a very small commitment of county funds, which can be drawn from by many pools, TDC, Restore, discretionary funds, and you've got several others. But we are offering the manpower, the equipment, and possibly the materials as well. We've got a bunch of companies that are willing to kick in now. Larry Downs Jr. Plumbing, we've got Containers Inc., Tim Parker, we've got the Orchard Bar, we've got Robertson Curtis, we've got Dan Clark Concrete. Salvo Verasso has volunteered to oversee the environmentally sensitive aspects of this. There are other businesses and people that will help. All we have to do is reach out to the public and we'll get thousands, well, certainly hundreds. I would like to talk about the LDC and the conditional use because the county does need to cross the I's and dot the T's. Please take care of that conditional use. We have a commitment from Tim Parker to supply 2 ADA porta potties for 3 years if needed to supplement and give enough time to be able to put in the proper facilities. We also have a beach service that is willing to come in and take care of the cleaning of the lot and the beach once it's fully opened up. In closing, let me just say, take some action today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cudd. Appreciate it. Next speaker, Melissa Pino.
Here's some red T-shirts for Commissioner Underhill and his wife. They say, please open the beach.
Thank you. Thank you. Melissa Pino, you have 7 people giving time. Francis Miller. Francis Miller.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Madam Counsel. The services that the gentleman alluded to, I mean, in procurement, can the county accept those services or can they not? I mean, those donated services that he just presented. Could we accept those services in porta potties and Robinson Curtis and all those? Or is that
the county can lawfully accept donations from private companies, we can and we have accepted donations, monetary or otherwise, in the past.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Timothy Smith. Mike Pino. Kevin Wade. Mary Scopus. Michael McCormick. Regina Smith. Okay. All right. You'll have 7 minutes, and you're recognized.
Melissa Pino, 413 Southeast Boblets. I just want to touch on something Randy spoke about, which is the political concern of this, the timing of this. The timing of this is happening because we just found out about it a month ago. We just caught wind that there was beach access that we were supposed to have, and that to add insult to injury, the condo owners across the street had to walk over to it with a locked gate. And they've been using it all along. Now, there are a couple handfuls of savvy Perdido residents who had figured out that they could enter it through the crab trap, pass over the easement for where the Sundowner has its walkway, and then go use our beach that we own. This is a different question than the roundabouts. I'm in full agreement with the way the roundabout planning got handled this morning at the agenda review, because that's on hold. So fine, there are no taxpayer dollars being wasted on that right now. There have been taxpayer dollars wasted every day that that beach hasn't been open for the last 5 years, and we still can't use it. Just to go through the excuses quickly, we started on the most absurd excuse, which was we can't open beach mouse habitat because it's beach mouse habitat. We can't have it because it was bought for beach mouse habitat and it's beach mouse habitat. Then we got to the point where it was all about the lawsuit that might happen by either the Seafarer or the Sundowner. Sure, that could happen. I would imagine one of the big worries about that is it would grind to halt the permitting for whatever is going on with that land north of Heron's Walk that they're surveying. It seems like it's supposed to be a high-rise condo development that they're going to clear a wetland for. I don't know how they're going to mitigate it, but the permitting hasn't happened for that project, and that's a huge concern. Then we got a video on Sunday morning of Commissioner Underhill pointing to all the footprints that the condo owners had made in the sand out there at 9 o'clock in the morning, saying, well, listen, this is open already, but it's open in the way we want it to be open. We don't want those cooler draggers out here ruining the seagrasses. Enough people know about this, and anyone can use it. You just have to walk a little ways. Now, I know Councilwoman Myers is going to be speaking later on to some ADA issues, so I won't dwell on that. This is an ADA-compliant project that is supposed to allow access to the water for everyone. The next excuse that came up was this was a shady land deal made by Gene Valentino. So the past commissioner in the room and the others who voted on it, were you aware you were involved in a shady land deal to acquire this? That was an excuse. Then Mrs. Underhill sent out the campaign email that Randy referenced. If you're curious why the gentleman was here talking about casinos, it's because an email that Mrs. Underhill sent out went viral and made it past the campaign. And she warned people that what we were trying to do was wreck the Perdido Key Master Plan and bring casinos to Perdido. This is the kind of chaos that gets engendered out of that media machine, that you've got a poor gentleman that actually saw this or heard about it and now thinks that there are casinos coming to Perdido. Next up, we have the incredibly complicated Restore red herring that was visited this morning. There have been people trying to figure out that discussion all day long. It's not Timothy Day's fault. I can't imagine what it's like to try to proceed under this direction. But there's a lot of misinformation that's being promulgated about that original Restore grant and how Restore works. How those are Treasury vetted projects that Commissioner Underhill had to say this about the Restore process yesterday on Escambia Citizens Watch, I believe. There was no ownership of the projects from start to finish. Ideas presented by citizens and staff were combined, morphed, changed, and evolved through every step of the process. No, they weren't. I wrote a grant for that Pot 1. That's not how it worked at all. And it certainly isn't how it worked with federally. The federal treasury has vetted those projects. So now we've got this incredible confusion where you've brought in another land acquisition, we've grown the original Restore grant. No one can figure out what's going on, and maybe there is a good explanation, but if there is, we're all interested in hearing it. Finally, there was the high density argument that Randy brought up. Here's the high density residential. What's suitable under there? Recreation and entertainment, parks without permanent restrooms or outdoor event lighting, which would give us plenty of time to get the conditional use through the Dev Review Board. The big question everyone has been asking is, are they going to vote? Are they going to bring it to a vote? Are they going to bring it to a vote? Do we have to vote twice now to get projects going in Escambia County? This already went through a vote 5 years ago. Why on earth would it take a second action? Unless there has to be reallocation of funding, but there are plenty of funding sources that might not need any reallocation. Like Randy mentioned, we've got, bed tax, the possibility of tapping into more restore. There's discretionary funding that just got brought up tonight. I don't know how it moves forward, because it's such a strange situation where you've got a project like this that's just sitting. What do you do about that? You're going to take a vote to reinforce the original vote, or just direct county staff to move the project forward? Because that's really all it needs. And this is the legacy of all of you up on this dais. Whether you're going to help us get beach access or whether we're going to stall it out. And Lumen, I hear your concerns. It's like, why does it have to wait another month? Well, heck, let's just wait another year. I mean, it's been 5 already. So I hope that you'll just direct staff to open this beach.
Thank you. Dan Wagman? You're not going to speak? Okay. Sava Varaza? I apologize, you have 1 minute just because we have a ton of speakers.
I'll try to hurry. Salvo Verrazzo, 221 Key Largo Place, Perdido Key, Pensacola, Florida. As I mentioned in the last meeting, I represent a super PAC of about 7 large condo owners. The Spanish Key, Key West of Perdido, and the Rolling Surf, Pescadora, and Key Harbor are the main ones. They sent a message again tonight that they're continually having trespassing issues out there. And it's because people want to come to why we all live here. They want to see the Gulf, they want to have access, and they don't understand why they don't have it. It represents 750 property owners. And yes, as Mr. Cudd said, I have 40 years of environmental consulting work, along with carrying my credentials. I still do pro bono work. When I retired for the county, I work every day. I get calls from code enforcement, I get calls from the environmental section, and I do it for nothing. I'd be more than happy to coordinate any efforts out there to make sure that there are no issues with the Perdido beach mounds. There are no issues with protective seagrasses or the sand dunes that protect against storm devastation. So with that being said, please pass that and go forward with that.
Thank you, sir. Rob Vodnius? Oh, sorry, I mispronounced your name.
Good evening. Rob Vadney, United States Navy retired commander, 225 Key Largo Place, Pensacola, Florida. You hear about the parking, you hear about the trespass. I'm here to talk about the people. Why do we move to Perdido Key? Why do we like to go visit? Because it is a family beach. You want to be a tourist? Go to Pensacola Beach and pay the extra fine to go over, okay, or the toll. But the reason people have memories, all right, and it's about making those memories. I'll tell you a little memory about a 35-year-old widow with 3 kids, and one of them was handicapped. And to go to the beach, to go crabbing, go surfing, and just enjoy the beach. And gentlemen, ladies, it's about having those memories. And if we can't have those memories, then we're putting politics over people.
Thank you, sir. Scott Trotter?
Scott Trotter, 300 Jamison Street, Warrington. I want to talk about the funding for this. We have an approved Restore Act project for this project specifically. It really can't be used for anything else under Treasury Department rules. If we want to use it for land acquisition, then we have to, that would constitute a material modification to the original plan. That would need another 45 days public input and reapproval by the Treasury Department. I want to ask all of you to use this for its original purpose. If it's the intent of the Board of County Commissioners to use this for land acquisition, then don't hide it from the public. Let the public have their say, have the 45 days, and then you can go ahead and proceed in that manner. But I think the best use of this would be to go ahead and use it as it was originally intended. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles Krupnick? And sir, unfortunately, 1 minute. We're very, very constrained on time and a lot of speakers.
All right,
Thank you.
a
You're recognized.
Yes, I'm Charles Krupnick, and I live at 14500 River Road, Unit 203 in Pensacola. I'm also the current president of the Perdido Key Association, and I wanted to just make a couple of comments, not to endorse one way or the other, but just to provide some information. Looking back at the PKA's 2015 survey of Perdido Key property owners, about 50% of the respondents agreed or strongly agreed that public beach access was important, but 56.4% disagreed or strongly disagreed that there should be more beach access locations for the general public. As a relevant issue, 64.5% of respondents also believe that the environment, including endangered species, should be protected in the growth of the Perdido Key area. Yeah, I believe the increased public beach access that many PKA members and Perdido Key beach owners would support would be if the county acquired more land in the vicinity of Beach Access 3.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Darrell Weeks? Mr. Weeks, it says the Crab Trap. Are you an employee of the Crab Trap?
I am the general manager of the
You're
Crab
the general
Trap in
manager.
Perdido
Okay.
Key. Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming, and you're recognized.
Thank you. I've also got with me Nick Serra, who is our CFO. I'm an 18-year resident of Escambia County, also an 18-year management at the Crab Trap on Perdido Key. I see no reason why this property should not be opened. The Restore Act funding is there for $150,000 for planning. There is definitely a lack of parking. I've also always have customers ask me, where do they get beach access? Where can they go find parking? I prefer to tell them that there's access on the Escambia County side instead of sending them to the plentiful that's on Alabama Point and keep those tax dollars in Escambia County. If we can get this property opened, we're pledging to right now going ahead and say that we will supply the funding for, which I believe is about $7,000 estimate for the picket fencing to protect the conservation habitat.
Thank you.
We have a number of, I'm sorry, I'm out of time.
Yeah,
I
but
apologize.
$7 grand. I'm going to hold you to it. $7 grand?
Yes,
All right,
sir.
$7 grand from the Crab
Thank you.
Trap. Very cool. Yeah, thank you. All right. Carolyn Grawi? Carolyn Grawi? Is she here? Nope. Okay. Okay, very good. I'll set her on the bottom of the stack. Sherry Myers. Councilwoman Myers, welcome. You're recognized. Unfortunately, we're down to 1 minute per speaker.
Yeah. Well, I'm here to speak for the Center for Independent Living.
Okay.
And I just want to say that people with disabilities have waited 5 years to have access to this property. And you all voted for Project Universal Access. It is being implemented right now. The county is in the process of hiring a consultant or selecting a consultant. But I would like to start with this project for universal access for all people. And I'll tell you that dune crossovers is one of the things that I put in that project, because I wrote it, to protect the environment. So I really hope that you move forward with this project, but within the context of what we're trying to do with the Universal Access Plan.
Thank you, Councilwoman Myers.
Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
I could.
Commissioner Robinson, you
Councilwoman
recognize.
Myers? No.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree. I mean, whatever we do in opening it up needs to be done accessible. And obviously, Project Universal Access, that's the whole deal. I mean, that's my project to make these things not just on Perdido Key, but also on Pensacola Beach to make those things accessible. So, I've hated how long it's taken. I will be leaving the board before. It's been 10 years since 8 years since the Deepwater Horizon event. It's taken a long time for us to get here, but I think we are in that way. Are you just indicating that you want to make sure, however the development is that we comply with universal access?
It needs to be part of that plan. And people with disabilities and the community need to be involved in the design of any access to the beach, including the design of dune crossovers. So I didn't have time to say that, But we need to be involved in the design of all access projects for people with disabilities to the beach.
Well, and again, I think that's the idea of that Restore project, and I'm very happy to have chosen it. And I think I see head nods from our staff that will be done, and anything we end up doing, whether it's here or Pensacola Beach, any access that we end up doing, make sure that it's accessible for everyone.
Right, and this project needs to be done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Myers. Next up, we have Mr. Alan Dennis, and you have several. Thank you. You have several folks giving you time. I'm going to run through these right quick. Dan Henderson. Is there a Dan Henderson? Don't see Dan Henderson. All right. Set that to the bottom. Okay. You have Pam Nolan. Okay. Sheila Peterson. Okay. Eddie McMillan. He left. Okay. Oops. Sharon Atkinson. Okay. Anise Henry. Okay. John Marsh. John Lime. I can't read this. 4717 Huron Drive. I can read that. Is that you? Okay, you're here. All right. Kevin Schweda. Kevin Schweda. Okay, he's here. And Ronnie Rivera. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We got 9 people. 9 minutes. All right. Mr. Dennis, you're recognized.
My name is Alan Dennis, 16401 Perdita Key Drive. I think the issue we have that we're talking about tonight, is this the most appropriate place to have a public beach? 75% of this property was purchased by was through a grant from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and it stipulated that it be for the protection of the Perdita Key beach mouse. The grant, I'm trying to make this as brief as I can. The issue that I think I learned immediately was when I talked to some friends, some representatives of U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and when I talked to Tim Day, and when I talked to Defenders of Wildlife. First question I asked was, where's the management plan? There is no management plan today. So, you may have, Mr. Cudd, you may have all these supplies and all these people that are going to take care of doing things over there, but it has to be blessed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Mr. Dennis, please point your comments up here.
Okay, well, that's one thing. We're going to put in the cart before the horse here. Now, as far as the other, there are other access points on the key. There's Big Lagoon State Park, 209 beach access parking places. There's Innerarity Point Park that's under development, 44 places. There's Perdita Key State Park with 1.7 miles of beach. There's the county-owned beach access of 1, 2, and 3, 86 parking spots. The River Road Bark Park, the River Road Kayak, the Johnson Beach with 300 to 400 parking places and all kinds of facilities. The question becomes, do we want to put the public on a small postage stamp inside a protected habitat that cars will be parking very close if they're going to stay on that slab? Cars will be dripping antifreeze and oil and all kinds of debris from vehicles, and then the rain comes along and washes that right into the sand where the beach mouse habitat is. It just doesn't make sense to me that we would put those animals at risk for a very small access point. I came to the meeting of the whole the other day with a friend, and in order to to develop this property, I said you have to have a management plan, but you also have to conform to U.S. Fish and Wildlife's criteria, which we don't know right now. And I remember Commissioner May said, well, I think y'all were talking about at the open meeting of the whole, we were talking about some FEMA funds or something along that line. And he said, and I wrote it down because I thought it was very interesting, he says, FEMA funds are federal funds, and we have to adhere to their guidelines. We don't know what the guidelines are right now for developing this property. So I think we've got to slow this down just a little bit and do exactly what Mr. Commissioner May said, develop them along the lines of what the federal grant says we can develop, how we can develop them. We're told this isn't a political issue, but it's so interesting that it would come up right here 12 days, well, maybe a month before. In 12 days, we'll know what the citizens of Escambia County want, what the citizens of District 2 specifically want. So at the very least, let's get our election behind us and see what the constituents of District 2 want to do with this parcel. And then let's get if we're going to develop this, let's get a management plan that's approved by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and then talk about a plan that protects the habitat of the beach mouse as well. You may question, well, what are my credentials in saying any of these things? And I think it's important that you know I've spent a lot of time environmentally. Tim Day will tell you that. In fact, I've given him a hard time several times. I did a turtle patrol for the state parks with Ann Harvey. I did turtle monitoring. I've got certifications from Panama City in turtle lighting and turtle habitat. I've got a Florida Master Naturalist, 120-hour course through the University of Florida. I think my credentials can speak for themselves, that this is not about just trying to knock something down for the pure politics of the situation, but to do it on behalf of what the beach mouse is entitled to have by way of this grant. 75% of this grant was paid for by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I'd like to open the floor to questions, but I guess that's not part of this.
Well, I'll ask you a question.
Okay, please do.
We had a meeting this morning, and we went through the slides and the environmental staff, because that's been my question from day one. We have to live up to what we said we would do in that grant application. We haven't done it. I was out there a week ago Sunday, and there's footprints, there's trash, there's no signage telling a person who comes over from the Crab Trap Beach up to our beach that's closed that they can't go into the dunes. So there's footprints, there's trash, there's no signage. So, and I saw about a couple dozen people using our beach that's closed. Now, on that day, I also went down to beach access number 1, and the parking lot was full of out-of-state plates, and there was no trespassing signs on either side of our 60-foot wedge of beach. All the way down, there was 2 uniformed officers patrolling, making sure that the citizens that were there did not cross the lines into the private beach. So a couple of questions. We voted 5 years ago for this. The environmental staff, I grilled them this morning. They said we can do this. It comports with everything. And if we use the existing footprint of the parking, we don't even have to file for an HCP permit. So we've got volunteers willing to do it. I just want to ask you a question. It sounds to me like you're against the public using this site at all for beach access. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
I think the public would be better served in a location that's closer to the central core of where they're developing these shops. You know, this place is not near one of the villages that we're planning on putting in.
Understood, and I say the more the merrier, but I mean, if we do that, what would you have us do with this? We purchased it from beach mouse habitat. We're not doing that. We purchased it for public access. We're not doing that. Only a select few that happen to know where it is are using it. So, you know, I don't disagree with more access. In fact, last year I voted with Doug to try and purchase more access. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, we own this 300 feet of beachfront that would double our free access at Perdido if we did what we said we were going to do when we got it. Are you against that?
I'm against anything that will interfere with the Perdita Key beach mouse. And
But
right
the
now,
environmental professionals have told us we can do both.
well,
Mr. Chairman, that's not exactly what
on
they said.
what on what
Well, we'll bring them
So-
up here. Let's ask them
Just
right now.
really, I mean,
on
Tim,
what
come on.
on
Let's
what
go.
what
let's
is-
have the speaker speak, and then we can
Yeah,
do
yeah.
the debating
well, he
up
asked
here.
for
How's that
questions,
sound?
so I'll go ahead and ask him questions is what I'll do. Go ahead, Tim.
And Tim has told me, he may not want to say it publicly, but he has told me this is one of the pristine, premier beach mouse habitats. It's interesting that the Florida DOT took and dug a diagonal tunnel, one of the few tunnels that's diagonal on the key,
Sure.
over to
Go ahead.
an unused portion of the property across the street
Okay.
that was purchased for non-development.
Okay, well, I'm gonna pause your time for a second. Tim's right here. Tim, we spoke this morning. That option A that we talked about, that first option, the low-impact option, use the existing footprint, add some parking, porta potties, and a walkover. Explain to this gentleman, can we do that under our can we do it?
Under the grant, it anticipated public access. And so what we have to do, as was previously mentioned, is we do have to get a plan approved by the service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
And how long does that take? A couple of weeks? Or
I would, on the timeline, I'd spoken that it would take me probably a couple weeks to get it done.
Okay.
I suggest that we had a couple weeks of public comment available to allow people to comment on the plan, because it will be something feeding public lands that were purchased federally. We would incorporate those comments, forward it on to U.S. Fish and Wildlife for their review and approval. U.S. Fish has told me that they thought that they could take care of that within a couple weeks.
Within a couple of weeks. Okay, so this is the guy that I rely. This is staff. This is the expert. This is subject matter expert telling us we can do it. The documentation I read says that we said we were going to do it. Meanwhile, that beach is closed. It's locked, gated. So I'm going to listen to my staff. That's the expert.
Well, I'm trying to be clear. That was a lot Tim said. I mean,
Sorry.
to me, it's kind of black and white. It's not gray. Yes or no, can we have public access without endangering the beach mouse?
We need to prepare a plan that will show how we'll protect the mouse while providing public access, and get approval from U.S. Fish and Wildlife to move forward.
So what's been the delay in that plan then? If that's all we need is a plan and it can happen, what's been the delay in that plan?
It's determination of use for the property. It's the board has had, the stated goal that, public access would occur there, but we haven't had any type of funding or direction to move forward and come up with, what we're going to do. And so by that, for example, if we decide to go with the option A that you've discussed, we need to develop a site plan and decide how we're going to do these things. Once we have that plan, then I'm able to move forward.
Commissioner May, and then Commissioner Underhill.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, it'll be a further discussion. I mean, because
Commissioner Underhill,
that's not clear that it should even be.
Okay, Commissioner Underhill, you recognized.
So, since we've got already on this topic, we'll go ahead and just, I want to get the other side of this story in. When we say that, first of all, I don't think anybody has ever been opposed to some level of low-impact public access at this location. Okay, so to argue anything other than that is arguing against a straw man argument. There is certainly going to, at some point, be some low-impact, small amount of low-impact public access here. So the statements that Tim has made, while accurate, we are not defining exactly what it is now, and so the really question becomes, what can you fit there? What will make it through the entire process of all of the public inputs that are going to come with the change of use, with what Fish and Wildlife is going to approve? And of course we're back down off of the 50 and the hundreds and things that were being said 2 weeks ago. We're down now to somewhere between 28 and 48. I think was the last that I saw. The point being that, yes, you can put some public access here. The question is this the best thing to do at this time to maximize the public access elements of the Perdido Key Master Plan? And I think that's what we'll end up having in the later discussion. But, I mean, the right time for that is when the five of us are debating.
Yeah, well, like I say, the gentleman asked if I had a question. I had a question. So I think, Tim, you've answered that question. Sir, you have some more time. You have 2 minutes, 51 seconds.
Just burning time, aren't I? Well, I guess back to my original statement, is this the most appropriate place? Can we, Tim would be able to tell us, can we use this as a mitigation for other development by just making it a non-public access? I think the thing that I'm concerned about is what I've seen at other public access points on the Key, and they are pretty rough in a lot of ways, that I would hate to see this even get close to what those areas look like and how they're abused. And I think there's things we don't know about right now. When SR 292 was put in years ago, I think there was a lot of red clay brought in and put under that highway. We don't know, because this is an old establishment, we don't know that under that slab is more red clay. So you say, well, it's only going to cost this much. We don't know till you dig it up and you say, oh my gosh, this is all red mud under here, and how's that going to affect the environment and the habitat itself? There's just a lot of unknowns that we don't know, and I think maybe Tim putting together a management plan and sending it to U.S. Fish and Wildlife and getting their input. I've talked to Christy Yanchus about this. I've talked to Kent Wimmer with Defenders of Public Wildlife. I've talked to Tim, and there's some other experts that we would want to bring into this process to see, is this really the best solution for making a public access? Wouldn't it be nice to have one that was a lot larger, that had no beach mouse restrictions, that you could have vendors, that you could have rentals, you could have all the kinds of things that people would want in a public access, and not ever have to worry about, well, is this affecting the Perdita Key beach mouse? But I thank y'all for your time.
Yes, sir.
I think this is a good dialogue to begin with. I just wish we could wait, not make a rush decision tonight, delay it for 12 days until we can get the politics behind us, and then move forward with what we've discussed earlier. Now, again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. Next up, John Singley, and it appears that you have one person giving time. Robert Johns. Is there a Robert Johns here in the house? Okay, and then John Singley. Okay, you're recognized, sir. You'll have 2 minutes. Okay. Okay. Hang on, okay, let's see here. Okay, I'll call Mr. McMillan next. Let's see. Rogers, Aramule. Okay, Dean. Yeah. Dennis McMillan? Eddie McMillan, excuse me. Eddie McMillan. He left? Okay. Do you want to speak? You've got 2 minutes. No, sir. Okay. What about Robert Johns? Do you want to speak? Okay. All right. Next speaker, Teresa Blackwell. Mr. Chairman, may I donate? Of course you can. Yeah. So you'll get 2 minutes. You want to donate your time too? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you get 3 minutes.
I got 3 minutes.
See, I'm fair.
I'll have to un-X some of this. Okay. Hi, good evening. Teresa Blackwell, 9535 Tower Ridge Road. We all know what this is about here tonight. The summer is nearly done. Where is the urgency to get even more beach access now? The urgency is the primary election in less than 2 weeks. This is a discussion item, so I don't know why people are asking about voting. It's obviously a discussion item. So, also, I'd like to say, ask yourself why Commissioner Burgosh is taking this on as his issue. Ask the people of Beulah how he has championed their issues, like OLF8. He talks on two sides of his mouth. One side says, you're going to get plenty of time to comment. We're going to have a master plan. Don't worry about it. The other side says, OLF8 will be a commerce park, and we're going to have something for you. We'll have a Burger King and a gas station. Commissioner Underhill, on the other hand, has been a voice for the people all along on OLF 8. He said, I want what the people of Beulah want for OLF 8. He is a person of the people. Why would we not do all we can to help our own subspecies of mouse survive? This proposal would cut the mouse's habitat in two with cars. And this is good habitat for this mouse. I read the conservation plan. It has primary and secondary dunes plus scrub habitat, which is further upland, that will help the mouse survive in hurricanes and provide food when there is less on the dunes. This mouse is the only one of its species that builds extensive tunnels underground where they store food, build a nest, and have an average of 4 pups at a time. They mate for life and can reproduce throughout the year. They face natural predators as well as feral cats. Yet loss of habitat and habitat fragmentation is their biggest threat in the conservation plan. That's what it says. There is, and another thing that plan says is that a lot of the habitat that is preserved for them only has this primary and secondary dunes. They don't have the scrub habitat, which can help them survive in a hurricane and provide food that they don't have in the other areas. So this is an important habitat for them. There is much access already on Perdido Key, and any in the future should be close to the urban core. I support the PK master plan and the conservation plan.
Thank you, Teresa. Karen Sindel. Karen Sindel, you're recognized. Is she here? Karen? Looks like Karen left. All right. Dorothy Garrett, and it looks like you'll have Dean Kirshner given time, as well as Jennifer Glossinger. Okay? All right, Dorothy Garrett, you'll have 3 minutes.
Dorothy Garrett, 11151 Gulf Beach Highway. During the past week, Commissioner Underhill has been doing a series of podcasts trying to make his case to the public about no need for a walkover and parking at access number 4. Now, Innerarity and Big Lagoon are not beach access. State and federal park are beach access, but they have fees involved. The state park is affordable, but the parking is limited and fills up quickly. The federal park, Johnson Beach, has a good-sized parking lot, but once you leave there and proceed to the other accesses, the parking is roadside and very limited. A few weeks ago, my daughter and granddaughter came into town. They went to Johnson Beach and were shocked when they had to pay $20 to enter for just one day. Now, Commissioner Underhill, you and your red gaggle of elitists back there may think that $20 is mere crumbs, but to a struggling family from, say, Cantonment, Warrington, or Brownsville, that is several entire meals. They are packing a lunch and spending a little money on fuel to bring their family to the beach for the day. They need free beach access. They need access number 4. In a P&J article dated May 9, 2018, entitled, Is Perdido Key Running Out of Public Beachfront? One commissioner says yes and suggests a remedy. They quote Underhill as saying, the BP money is punishment money paid as a result of a crime because the company, through its failures, denied us use of our beaches. As well as, this is making lemonade out of lemons. We will use the BP money to procure forever beach access for the people of Escambia County. So, gentlemen, how about we start with a small batch of lemonade instead of continuing to let the public just suck lemons? If the BP punishment money is a result of a crime through failures denying us use of our beaches, as Commissioner Underhill stated, how is denying us use of our publicly owned beach access number 4 any less of a crime? We, the people, are being denied use of our beach by failure of our county commission to pursue the funds needed for opening this public beach. Why not use a minuscule amount of that immense restore fund, which is intended for public beach access, to open the access we already own? We only need about 12% of that fund to get this access open to the public under our simple plan. We all know how long it takes to get through all of the government red tape. It's already been delayed for 4 long years. Now that high season is over, it is the time to get started immediately so that it will be ready come springtime. Political delay tactics are not beneficial to the public at large, and this access is for the benefit of the public at large, whom each of you were elected to represent. Commissioner Berry and Commissioner May, you both represent the very people who need this public beach access. Commissioner Robinson, with any luck, you may very well soon be representing all the citizens of the city of Pensacola, many of which are the people who need this public beach access.
Thank you very much. Next up, Jacqueline. Thank you. Jacqueline Rogers. And you'll have Claude Gillette. Is Claude Gillette here? Okay. Jacqueline Rogers, you'll have 2 minutes. You're recognized.
Good evening, Jacqueline Rogers from Cantonment. I did want to point out that, first of all, this is super political. Everyone knows that. You know the timing. I appreciate the commissioners that called that out and will not allow that. This is zoned HDR right now. You said you'd have to get a conditional use. When you go to the Board of Adjustments and all that support is there to argue against that, how are you going to get that passed? So calculate that into your costs, too. I support long-term planning, not just in my area, but also for Perdido Key. And I stand with these people to say they had publicly vetted meetings. You guys passed this. I'm sorry Commissioner Wilson Robertson did not read the Perdido Key Master Plan, just like he did not read the sector plan. On page 18, it says, yes, people want beach access, but the beach access is supposed to be near the core. I'm tired of all the political stuff. This property has value as natural habitat. It does. Not because we all love the mice, although the mice do things to keep dunes, and there is a reason. I am not a big environmentalist, but because you can trade this property, mitigate it, use it for mitigation to get a bigger beach access, a better one. And when you factor in Councilwoman Meyer's access things, there's going to be a lot less than 50 or 48 or however it is. This is too far from the core. That's what the plan calls for. We all go to Civicon. We're filling auditoriums. Gentlemen, not because this mother of 13 has nothing else to do. That room is full. Do you know why it's full? Because we want to do something different. We want to see smart growth and smart planning, and we don't want it to be a political football that you use for developer contributions or you use it for political purposes.
Thank you.
Follow your long-range plans.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Thank you. Larry Downs Jr., and you'll be getting time from Michael Bearden. Larry and Michael, are you guys here? It looks like they've left. Next, May Dean, and I believe do you have one person giving you time? No, you don't. Okay. May Dean, you're recognized, and you have some, hang on, before you start your time, you have pictures here. Do you want me to pass these out to?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is there one for each of us here?
Yes,
okay.
There's 2 for each of you.
All right, here we go. Would you, sure, please. Okay. I won't use your time until we, because
okay.
I'm assuming you're going to talk to these pictures?
Yes.
Okay. So she's going to pass them out. All right. Thank you. Okay. You can just give them to my counterparts. I was out here. I'm very familiar with this. Okay. Thank you. Bear with me for 1 second. I didn't realize what we got going here. All right.
Time starting.
You're recognized. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening,
you have
Commissioners. I'm May Dean, 13396 Gongora Drive. I brought you these aerial photographs so we can discuss the condition of this parking area, and I respectfully disagree with staff's estimate for developing the beach access. I do not see a turn lane. As you can see, there is no turn lane. Or not 3 lanes right in that area of Perdido Key Drive, and that is not in the cost estimate. and for safety's sake, a turn lane is essential. And just as Alan said, I don't know if a soil sample has been done, but I'm assuming that there's probably red clay under that parking lot, and there will be an extensive cost of removing that clay. It's all over Perdido Key. And also, there's not a retention pond listed in...
Thank you.
I have some
Okay.
questions for the speaker.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Doug. Go ahead.
May, when were these pictures taken?
Monday.
So the area to the west, which is the top of your picture,
Which one?
the picture of the main part of the parking lot. I see that quite a bit of the parking lot actually has a full cover, and in fact has native foliage coming back.
Exactly. And it's all cracked up.
Yeah. So
it's no like pave over job, whatever. Yeah. I mean, you can see from these, it's a complete tear out and redo.
Okay.
I think Tim wants to come up. Did you have something to add to that, Tim, about that process, what that process would entail?
Just commissioners, I saw some puzzled faces with the discussion on red clay. On both Bear Islands, the county has essentially a red clay ordinance.
Okay.
And so if we had a process where we ultimately did have to tear the asphalt out, if it does have a red clay base, we'd be required under our own ordinance to remove those red clays, backfill with clean sand before going back. So there is a cost potential there.
Let me ask you, though, because Commissioner Underhill raised a very good point in looking at that. If there's native grasses growing up through, can those be removed to unearth the original parking footprint, or is that against...
Yes, it can.
So we can go in there and clean that off. And let me ask you, we could go in with a parking lot permit and resurface it without a habitat conservation plan?
Yes.
Or could we?
So the specific answer is yes, but with whatever the board decides they'd like to move forward with, it may need some review through development services.
Sure. Yeah.
There's some other reviews that would take place.
What about, now I've heard about the retention pond. We would not have to build a retention pond if we just did parking lot on this existing footprint. Is that correct?
To my knowledge.
Okay. Because I'm hearing a lot about retention ponds, but I don't see a whole lot of retention ponds out there. But Doug, you still got your light on. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, there are certainly, we are certainly requiring retention ponds and construction out on Perdido Key. I don't think necessarily, if you're using the same footprint, that you're probably not getting into that too much until you start increasing your impervious. Park or a retention pond could in fact come into play depending on what the definition of it is when we start to do it.
That's
correct. All right. Tim, what are your thoughts on these areas that have essentially, nature's taken her back? Sand is very migrant out there. Are you supremely confident that that we would not be subjecting ourselves to a lawsuit with regard to those? Now, I understand that, in terms of the habitat as a burrowing habitat, clearly that's not going to work out, but that is clearly forage habitat there. That one could make a fairly strong argument for, no?
Yeah. That's a true statement. From county perspective, what was originally bartered with U.S. Fish, was that full area of asphalt. As we go through our planning process, about half of that area is covered with sand and is vegetated. It would not provide habitat in terms of burrowing and shelter, but it currently does provide forage.
Okay. So what does that mean, though? Can we still
Mr.
pull
Chairman,
it
means still have the floor.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you. All right, so Tim, and I'd like for you to get back to that in a minute, but I'm looking at the second to last slide of your slide deck, and I see that you, in fact, have some critical habitat, the area all to the south, and then you have critical habitat to the north as well, correct?
That's correct.
Particularly to the north and west corner of the parking lot area.
That is correct.
And those two habitats are now combined to one another. Is that correct? With that sand over there, that's what we're looking at in this picture, right? Because as I'm looking at that picture,
the area of sand that's vegetated currently does connect those two parts of critical habitat.
Okay, and so when we get to further into the discussion, gentlemen, the connectivity of various sections of critical habitat is one of the critical elements of the Habitat Conservation Plan. So I think we should just recognize that as a vulnerability for whatever that we go forward with, in that we have to be attentive that those two parts of critical habitat are now fully connected, by nature having taken her course. Can we go in there and clean it out? Certainly, that may be a possibility, but it's a question that we will not be able to answer with the expertise that's only here in this room right now. Is that correct, Tim?
It's correct, because as a bottom line, we do have to define what we want to move forward with before I have enough information to start crafting a proposal.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. And that's all the question I have for Tim on these pictures. So, Mr. Chairman, if you wanted to follow up on yours,
Yeah.
I'd concede the floor to you for a moment.
Yeah, sure. No, I was out there and I walked this entire area. I went around the fence that was locked. And this picture, this isn't all sand, Doug. If you go out there, that's blacktop that's faded. Most of this. There's some sand and there's some, I see where you're talking about, but a lot of this is blacktop that's covered up and faded. In fact, what you're looking at right here on the lower right of this picture is actually blacktop. But I think we're splitting hairs. I think if you want to do it, there's a way to do it. We follow the process. If we don't want to do it, I don't know that we got to make up reasons why we can't do it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, though, the thing is we've been talking and we've been throwing a lot of data artifacts out for the last couple of weeks. And when I say we, I mean those who have been really pushing this effort. I've remained silent on it because tonight is the right time for that discussion.
Well, here we are.
Not in the public forum and in a committee of the whole where the staff hadn't had a top opportunity to put their information together. So now is the right time for it. And so when we say, we keep 2 weeks ago we were saying 50 parking spots. That is clearly not going to happen. Now we're down somewhere between 28 and 48. One of the limiting factors is what is how much of this asphalt actually remains in a usable enough condition that it can be repurposed. And the picture that Ms. Dean has put in front of us should give you some level of pause to recognize that the edges of that asphalt, and certainly this is asphalt that was 15 years old or so when Ivan happened, then went through the experience of the hurricane itself and then the removal of the debris, and now another 10 years or so of sitting fallow. That asphalt is far from being something that is going to be a very quick and easy. So the 110,000 number that's been thrown out there is probably unrealistic when you look at the condition of the asphalt. So what I'm doing here, and as we have this discussion, I'm not necessarily saying that this data point or that data point is incorrect, but there is some rigor that has to go into each of these data points. And just because it's been said from that podium by one side or the other or both is not really that relevant. We have to do the rigor that goes with deciding what the facts actually are and what's supportable by facts. So that's that's all I've got for Tim on these. But I do have a question with regard if Michael Rhodes is here. Michael, if you could come forward. Of course, Director Rhodes is responsible for an awful lot of parking lots and public accesses throughout the county. Director Rhodes, can you give me your opinion about, you're looking at this, and we're saying that we might want to turn this into an ADA qualified public access to the standards that we build things here in the county for our people. Are you looking at that and saying, oh yeah, we can probably just clean that up and resurface it? Or are you thinking this is a larger project than that?
Well, first, before and I don't want to speak for West Marine and the road department, before we did anything on the property, we would make 110 absolutely sure that we were in compliance with environmental to begin with, as I heard the conversation take place. And I don't want to speak for Wes on that, but if asked, I would make sure we were in compliance. As you were stating, as you know, budgetarily, our funds can be limited. I do work for Mr. Brown and the 5 commissioners, and with funds limited, these type dollars that we have for LOST are used across the Escambia County for various aspects of ballpark improvements, light improvements, safety improvements, you name it, walking tracks. I could name a bunch of different stuff that my dollars are used for. And one thing when I present these aspects to you and all the commissioners, we look at sustainability. Have I looked at it in depth from a sustainable aspect? I have not. But when I look at park projects to get to you guys for review, we definitely look at sustainability. That would be something we have to review. I will say a lot of the park improvements we do make in Escambia County that we have made in recent years for each commissioner, they're good for the whole of the community. and they're also sustainable. And when I say sustainable, making sure we have maintenance dollars allocated for said property. I hope I'm answering some of your questions, talking about some of the individual type aspects of what we do use these type funds for.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, but I mean, the real question that I'm asking is just, and realize, I mean, actual mileage may vary. I know that you can't sit here and look at this one drone picture and say, oh yeah, it'll cost X number of dollars. I would never try to present that in front of you, or to use a number, one way or the other,
right.
Based on that. But what you're looking at in front of you, you have that picture down there?
I don't, but I can see it enough and to say this. That's okay. I will say,
is that a resurfacing job or is that a replacement job?
I would say that looks to be, from where it looks now, a replacement job based on what I see. But there could be some resurfacing. I'm not the expert on that.
We could get lucky.
Yeah, but I will say this, and again, this is not. I'm not going to get into it too deep, but to limit to say it's $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000, that's pretty tough to do at this point in the juncture. To say 100, 200, 300, because it can grow. And again, from my world, then you have to start building in how much resource we're going to put for maintenance. As you all know, we do when we build these type things at all park amenities, we have to look at maintenance aspects as well. But sorry if I danced around that enough.
For those in the audience who are not aware, Director Rhodes is aware that we are in our budget cycle right now. No, very good points, and thank you. The point that I'm actually looking for is that we've been talking about citizens coming and sweeping this off and getting it open. That is probably, I mean, there's some evidence here that would indicate that might be an unrealistic expectation. Is really the point behind the question. I think the answer made that clear.
Yes, sir. So, and again, I work for Mr. Brown and U5, and I'll do as I'm directed.
As you always do. Thank you very much. Truly one of the rock stars of our organization. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have for him.
Doug, I mean, there a gentleman, I think it was Mr. Cudd, said that they had a lot of donated opportunity from certain companies. I mean, would that work? Be something that someone in your district has talked to you about donating? I know he called out a lot of names. I would assume that if we could get that work for free, it wouldn't have to come out of our budget.
None of the individuals that were.
I mean, you'd like that, wouldn't you, Mike?
Yeah. Again, I would have to cross-check other people, but again, services like that, I guess ultimately not being selfish, but if all the parameters were exhausted before coming to the park sell OST dollars, that would be great because I'm committed to a lot of other folks, and I will continue to work as I'm directed by you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. And Lemon, to answer your question, I mean, no, none of those individuals and none of those offers were ever made to the county directly, prior to this time. Prior to this issue coming up 2 weeks ago, I've still not actually seen any of those offers made in writing. But again, until we can actually define what it is that we are going to do, then those are all interesting data artifacts and certainly useful and certainly indicative of the way we live our lives on Perdido Key. I mean, we don't have the beach cleanup patrols that Pensacola Beach has. We have a flip-flop army of us that go out there and do that pretty much every Monday morning during the summer. So the point, I think, that about the volunteer assistance and whatnot, like we all know during campaigns or any other time, hey, tell me what you need and I'll be there for you. The ones that actually, how much of that actually materializes in the end is not is rarely what all that was promised. So, but that's another another point of the discussion for later on. May, was that all that you had with regard to these pictures that indicated that covered all your comments with regard to the pictures? I kind of stole that from you, and did you? Well, I'd be interested to know because there's what you're also seeing in the second picture is the extremely high dune structure, and that high dune structure is fairly unique to that location.
I don't know which is the second picture and which is the first picture.
The first picture is the one we were talking about first, that one right there. The second picture that actually shows the high dune structure.
Yes, you can actually sort of place these together like this. They're not quite.
Right.
Yeah, they're not on the same scale.
They're on the same scale, exactly. Thank you, Commissioner. However, you can see that most of this property is dune, and then there's just a small amount of access. And it actually will have to have a lot of signage because it won't be seen from the road, where beach access number 3 is completely flat. It will be able to build ADA compliant walkover. It won't require, I don't think, a 270-foot walkover. From this point right here over this dune, which I didn't get that picture, in your estimate is 270 feet. At beach access number 3, I don't have the exact numbers, but I don't think it'd be anything like that, and it would be much better for ADA to take this money and rather than spend millions of dollars for 25 parking places, to spend it on beach access 3, which is completely flat, doesn't have a dune, and you can put more parking, more ADA, and it's right at the intersection of River Road and Perdido Key Drive, and you can have a traffic light there at some point in time. It just is better planning. It's better long-range planning. And the cost per parking spot for this is going to be astronomical. It's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Thank you. We do have 2 more speakers we haven't got
thank
to
you.
yet, gentlemen, so we're going to go ahead and take the speakers now. Carolyn Grawie? Because I know you left earlier. Okay, but you're here. There we go.
Yeah, good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I actually planned to be at the very end of it, not at the beginning, so I don't know how my name came up earlier. But anyway, irregardless, thank you for allowing me to speak. And again, thank you to all of you again for recognizing the center at the time of the Americans with Disability Act anniversary. What I want to make sure that we're thinking about is we already have a plan that exists for Perdido Key. You already have a plan that exists regarding what the county is going to do with consultation for universal project access. You also already have requirements that are from the contract that you've already entered into under the Fish and Wildlife Reserve from the U.S. Department, which says you must do whatever you do with Americans with Disability Act access. And we want you to go beyond that. We want you to do universal access. And what that means is that you follow the plans that need to take place, whether it be here or at another site, and the consultant will determine that.
And I think you've heard from the board. Yes.
Carolyn, I appreciate you, and I'm sorry we just have such short time tonight, but thank you very much for being here. And again, we are all very happy to be there at your event, and everyone has been supportive of Project Universal Access. And I think as we move forward, we will see these things there. No one's been more frustrated with the delay of some of these things than I have been. But again, I realize I wish it was here today. But the good news is that money's there. The project's going to happen. At some point, we are going to see these things come to reality. I wish it would be today as well, but that's just one of the problems.
Right. We want it to be here today, but we want it to be done properly, which means we don't just rush because we want to do it. We do it correctly.
We agree with you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
And the final speaker on this subject is Joe Mirabili.
Joe Mirabili, 1242 Parasol Place, Perdido Key. Couple of quick comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. The property, and most of what I'm going to say is going to be redundant with what was said earlier, but hopefully it'll be in a little better context. The property acquired with federal monies, 300 feet of frontage, 75 feet that could be developed. I think we're generous if we say 35 parking spaces. I don't know how much per space. It depends upon whether you have to remove the asphalt and so on, and replace, with pure sand. The important point that may have been neglected, or perhaps not, is that this site would be the fourth in a series of disjointed beach accesses. All right, one is 80 feet, two are 50 feet. This would be 75 feet. Well, this is 75 feet. That's fine. It's at the end of the key in Florida. All right? And it would serve Ono Island and Alabama residents real well.
Thank you.
Mr. Mirabili, I have a question.
Doug, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Joe, it's not a secret to anybody that you are part of the team that is considering building the town center that we identified in the Perdido Key Master Plan. You and a number of other investors and developers that have actually come to the attention of the county in part because we have a master plan. And for the rest of my peers, you know that you have heard that other developers from out of town and other interested parties actually started looking at the northwest sector because of the sector plan. So, Joe, my question, and I'm saying all that just to establish that Joe clearly has a personal interest in what he's doing. And my question for you is, as you're looking at, you looked at the master plan and you're looking at the town center, how does beach access come into play? That we've got the disjoint. You referred to these disjointed small accesses. What is that? What would right look like as you would think about planning out a much more dense Perdido Key? Than what we have today?
Ideally, wherever you have your commercial core or activity, the beach access should be within walking distance. Ideally.
Okay. And in fact, that was actually articulated in the Perdido Key Master Plan, page 18. I'm sure everybody's already knows, because I've been talking about it quite a bit, that the additional beach access and increases in the beach access do, in fact, need to be in the town center or near the town center. Part of the reason for that is that whoever does the development and actually fleshes out this plan, and keeping in mind that the Perdido Key Master Plan is actually a series of constraints, as Joe oftentimes refers to them when he's talking to me. It's not something that the county was ever designed to build. It was a series of constraints to put on somebody like Mr. Mirabli that tells you what is possible. One of the keys to that Perdido Key Master Plan was to increase public access, ideally within walking distance of the commercial core. That is the key. That is if we continue to do the same thing that we have been doing with these small, tiny accesses, not only does it not meet the requirements and the expectations of the Perdido Key Master Plan, but you are in fact creating more opportunities for conflict between the day visitor and those that own property on the island. It has always been the objective of the Perdido Key Master Plan to do all that we can to eliminate the conflicts between the day visitor, the property owner, and those who live in the greater Perdido area. So, Joe, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That's the last speaker that we have. Any discussion from other board members? Anyone want to weigh in? Doug, your light's on. You want
Certainly be happy to hear from my peers before I get started. I do have quite a bit to say to talk about. There have been a number of things said over the last 2 weeks that need to be addressed.
Okay. Commissioner May, you're recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. I say our recommendation of the board discuss the use of the county on golf course property. Do we have a presentation from staff?
We do.
So are we going to get that from staff?
Yeah, that's coming.
And then I want clarification from legal. There was a motion made way back when. What was that motion, and what would have prohibited that action from taking place? I mean,
we'll take both of those.
I appreciate you bringing it. The original motion, right?
I mean, the one Wilson made.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what brings me to this tonight. I'm revisiting. I mean, if there was an action item that was made, I mean, there's going to have to be a counter motion. I mean, what are we revisiting?
The only thing that this board voted on was to acquire the property. There was never money set aside or any other thing to do anything with the property once it was acquired.
Well, I think we need to find out.
That would be good if we could get a clarification.
And if that's the clarification, Doug, I'm glad. And I'm good if that's what it was. Is
that true?
I mean, Allison, but we need some clarification. I mean, we'll be here for a million years if we revisit everything that we've ever made a motion on.
You voted, the board voted, and I'm sorry, I don't have the minutes, I don't think.
I just sent the motion down to him.
But, I mean, the
I only had
board
one copy.
voted some 4.5 years ago or so to acquire the property. It is clear from the backup materials that were provided that approximately 25%, I think it was actually 26%, 26% of that funding was county funding, LOST dollars, with the intent of providing Perdido Key beach access. The other 74% was grant funds for protection of mouse habitat. And it was acquired, that we closed on the property, and we own the property, and we have since we closed some years ago. And my understanding is that the infrastructure that's necessary to ensure that that 74% is not used for inappropriate purposes has never been allocated, and therefore it has remained closed for any public access.
And it remained closed. It's your understanding it remained closed because of what, Council?
Because in order to meet the requirements of the Habitat Conservation Plan and the grant restrictions for the 74% of the funding, there needs to be certain infrastructure in place to protect that part of the property. In other words, things like boardwalks that go over dunes or fences that protect the trampling of that part that's intended for habitat.
So let me be clear. So we bought it, 20%, 26% of it should have been used for public access, 74% for protection of the mouse, but we could not open it because of what? I mean, because we couldn't open it before. I mean, there's no way, if there's a technicality, the reason we couldn't open it, I mean, a discussion tonight can't make me open it if technically we can't open it. I mean, could we or could we not have opened it?
We have to install the protective measures on
So
the
we
site.
cannot open it until we install the protective measures.
That's correct.
But there's nothing that prevents us from installing protective measures other than just doing it. Is that what you're telling me?
It's a plan and funding, yes.
And a conditional use for public parks, as Mr. Jones indicated this morning.
That'd be nice to know 5 years ago. I mean, so we cannot, I mean, we're misleading. I mean, we have people say, open it, don't open it. But technically, if we wanted to open it, we can't open it right now because you said we don't have the measures in place to open it, correct?
Correct.
I'm just trying to get clarification.
We would have to go through the normal site plan review process. And
Is that what's in your presentation? Do you want to do the presentation, then we'll ask the questions?
Well, I mean, I want to get clarification.
Yeah, it's in the
because I've
presentation.
been dealing with this for 5 years. I mean,
Yeah.
he can give me a presentation all night. I mean, can I open it or can I not open it?
Commissioner, I'll try to answer that. As Tim mentioned, and as he will mention in his presentation, there is a management plan that would have to be submitted to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They would have to approve the plan for the public access if that was going to be done. So that would be a step. There's the county approvals that would have to be done. That would be a step. And there would have to be funding that would have to be allocated to do the types of barriers that Allison mentioned to protect that beach mouse habitat. So there are several steps that would have to be done before the gates could be opened.
So we would have to first get permission from Fish and Wildlife, then we'd have to do an assessment and get a bid of what it's going to cost.
Correct.
As well as a couple of public hearings for the change of use.
Commissioner Berry, you recognized?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the reason it didn't go forward, at least for my position, I was unaware that there was an additional need. Part of it's being a lay person. You acquire property, Gulfront property where a condo was, and the condo was no longer there. I just naively thought the acquisition of the property accounts for the access, and to know that it has sat unutilized in any way, with the gap being, whether it's exactly 110,000 or 150,000 or 200,000 or whatever the number is, we have an approved restore project that has money in the project for this. At least by the time the restore project was approved, I would hope that the idea, that the proposal would have come back to the board. Now that this project is approved, do you want to allocate the funding to begin the process of opening this up for the portion that the county put in? And that's what I would have expected. So I was surprised when I heard that it wasn't open. And with the funds being there, I don't see what the impediment is now. I mean, as far as taking action, the taking action tonight, I would perceive really is just giving some direction to move forward with the process and identify the funding. If the funding is the restore funding, then that's funding identified, and to start the process just starts the process. I don't see. That's the full action.
I concur with you,
Stephen. I need to answer to that because there's actually quite a few moving parts that went into that play.
It wasn't a question.
Yeah,
but it is also not entirely accurate.
Okay, well, I'd be corrected.
And I'd like to clarify why that's not accurate.
That's if you're my colleague, you're not my supervisor. If what I said is inaccurate, it can be corrected by someone that knows that works for the person that works for me, which is Jack.
If I may, Commissioner, the Restore project that was approved by the county commissioners, that's in the multi-year implementation plan, and it was also approved by the Treasury Department when they approved that plan, is a planning assistance grant. That funding is $147,000, I believe, is the amount, and that funding is for the planning, the design, and the permitting for parking, for doing walkovers, for restroom facilities, for whatever protective measures would be needed for the beach mouse habitat. So that funding, unless we went through a long process to change the use of that funding, right now is for planning assistance and for design and permitting.
Is there not a Restore project for beach access, for Perdita Key beach access?
We have submitted a project to DEP. It's in the DEP portal. It has not been approved or awarded, but that was for construction funds to actually implement beach access.
Okay, and Tim, unfortunately, this morning when we talked about it, I mean, we can use the Restore funds that are there. I mean, you were alluding to whether it's 150, 160,000 that could be used, but I thought you mentioned that there was 1 point something million that was already approved through Restore for beach access.
No, what's available is planning monies. What was approved by the board and went to MYIP and was approved by Treasury is a planning grant with an unspecified location on the key for design.
Okay.
The total Pot 1 project was over, it's $1.5-ish million. And when we came to the board with our first 10 projects, the discussion from the board was to take these projects and run them through design and to work to find other funding sources for construction. So we would leverage our Pot 1 monies as far as we were able to.
So there's not additional construction dollars for Restore that's approved?
Can I answer a better question you might want to ask them? There is loss of use NERDA money, which could be applied to this. And I do believe there's loss of use NERDA money that could be applied if you had done the plan.
Yes, and that was submitted in July of 2016. We have that in the portal. We're actively shopping for NERDA funds for access construction for Perdita Key.
I mean, I know a large part of Florida's NERDA is going to be loss of use. There aren't a lot of projects that comply with that. I mean, this is one of them that could comply with that.
Yes, sir, and that's, in part of the presentation, that's kind of why the construction project is on LOST4 as an unfunded project, because staff is confident that we're going to be able to secure other funds to assist due to loss of use through Restore. It's just going to take us a little time to get those funds to come to the county.
So there's currently no funds in Restore for whether it's a walkover or the resurfacing or replacing or whatever the physical construction is. You're saying there's no Restore money that's approved for that currently, correct? That's what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, Tim, I misunderstood what you said this morning.
So at this point, why don't we let him do the presentation, and then we'll recognize Commissioner Underhill right after for his questions.
Thank you, Commissioners. So very briefly, wanted to go through land acquisition programs ongoing on the Key. This parcel was originally part of a Section 6 grant that was provided from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The original target for that grant was a property off River Road that's 14901. That's 28 acres, and ultimately what happened is we failed to successfully negotiate a price with the owner. And working with U.S. Fish, we targeted this property at 16400 block of Perdita Key Drive due to the high dunes that are present on the north side of the parcel. In 2013, we had board direction to purchase it. We were successfully accomplished it in 2014 with a purchase price of $3.142 million. And it was roughly a 75-25 split between a local option sales tax and the federal grant. And stated purposes within the grant was for beach mouse habitat protection due to those high dunes and had a public access component. So since that time, county staff has continued efforts to acquire funding to continue to enhance public access on Perdita Key. In 2016, we received an additional Section 6 grant that has a $2 million value. And utilizing the same process we did to acquire the Sundown property, we're utilizing the Trust for Public Lands. And although they've made numerous attempts to work with landowners to get to a sales price that was close to appraised value, we have not been successful yet. Their primary targets have been east of Perdita Key State Park, which is similar with the goals of the master plan in trying to locate public access in areas that are close to where town centers are anticipated. And the county has additional holdings north of 292. Actually, on the map on the far side, there's 24 acres that the county acquired with beach mouse mitigation money in 2015 that was wholly with beach mouse mitigation. In May of 2017, the board supported a budget amendment and an attempt to acquire property near access number 3, and had a budget amendment of $1 million towards that endeavor. And
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
if you don't
Commissioner.
mind. So for that allocation, was that the other million? Was that the other million that you were kind of referring to in the office this morning?
Yes, sir. That is
Okay.
the $1 million that the board they reallocated it into an account that would have allowed staff to move rapidly on an acquisition because the challenge in working with Trust for Public Lands, when we get it under contract, it generally takes between 6 and 10 months to be able to bring it to closing. So
that's the $1.2 million you were talking about? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, without that coming back to the board, could that money could not be used for construction without a budget amendment? Was it so clearly acquisition only, not for construction of previously acquired lands? Because, and the reason I say this, if in May of 2017, I had known that we had a parcel of this size that wasn't that wasn't open for whatever reason, and if the biggest reason was we didn't have construction dollars, I think the board probably would have still looked at doing an allocation, a budget amendment for $1 million, but might have segregated a portion of those for construction of the previous acquired property if we knew that we had already. I would have never voted to move $1 million from common dollars in LOST 3 to Perdita Key beach access acquisition only if I knew that something we had acquired 4 years before wasn't open in the good faith that the board acted at that time. Or at least I would have said, well, if we're going to look at acquisition, why don't we look at a portion of the money opening what we've already paid for? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
But Steve, but even if you had the money, it seems like they got to go through the proper paperwork with Fish and Wildlife, even because they don't know what a cost is, and now you got to go through Fish and Wildlife to come back. Why it didn't go through Fish and Wildlife and go through the protocol, I don't know. But that would be the first step, correct? Correct. I'm asking Tim. Because we're talking money now. Money doesn't even matter. We don't know what money is. We don't know if it gets approved, if it gets rejected. I want to make sure I'm saying what is true and correct. Am I saying that, or would y'all clarify something for me?
It's to develop that as a public access. We need to go through a public process to determine the amenities, the desires, the goals, and then with some form of design, and it could be as simple as Commissioner Bergosh, which is a very simple parking lot design. It could be the project that was in the Pot 1 submittal, which is something more like what's at Perdita Key State Park or Park West. But it's as soon as we have a design to work with, then I can move forward in getting necessary approvals to push the project.
Did we have the planning dollars in May of 2017? Had we been awarded the $147,000 for planning and restore at that time?
The multi-year implementation plan wasn't approved by the BCC until after May of 2017.
Okay.
But I'm Commissioner Berry. What I'm saying, if there was a plan, I mean, there's no way. I don't care if it was Commissioner Valentino or Commissioner Underhill. I mean, there's no way we wouldn't find $150,000 once the plan was there to get public access on a motion that we had made for 20% access. If someone had come to me, a commissioner from that district, if a commissioner from that district would say he needs $150,000, I mean, that's simple.
Or if one citizen from the public had come and said, you know, you guys took an action, and you know, I don't know if you're aware, but you know, we still can't use that property. I mean, that would have been a different discussion then too.
But I'm to the point. I mean, that I don't think there is a point of money discussion tonight, because we're not at a money discussion, because you don't have plans. You can't pull a number out of the air and say this is going to be adequate. I mean, that's the $150,000, $120,000. We're pulling that out of thin air.
You're right, Commissioner. I mean, the questions that would need to be addressed during a planning process would be, you know, are we talking about portalets, or are we talking about a permanent structure for a bathroom that could be $500,000? Or are we talking about a new dune walkover? Or are we talking about maybe utilizing the existing dune walkover that's adjacent to this property? Are we talking about resurfacing the existing asphalt? Or we really have to rehab the whole thing, including, you know, possibly removing red clay and abiding by the White Sands Ordinance? There are many, many questions that would have to be addressed during that planning process before we can even come up with an estimate.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no motion in the world that can tell you to go through the planning process. There was a motion years ago that said 26% access. And those things are the things that, Steve, in my opinion, should have been happening and should have been brought back to this board. And then we would have decided, as you said, whether we want to spend $150,000, $500,000, or the $1 million that you have there. I mean, but we're having a great exercise and a great conversation tonight, but I mean, it's not substantive because we can't move on it. I mean, go ahead. But Chips, I agree with you. You're absolutely right.
Grover, did you want to weigh in? You turned your light on.
Well, and I'm going to wait till we get to the whole point.
All right, go ahead. Tim?
Okay. So in terms of funding history to construct a beach access, the county in 2015 submitted for local Pot 1 dollars. Mm-hmm. In 2016 July, we submitted to the state to try to bring state dollars to develop public access. Actually, I've already been through this. I apologize. And at the very end, since the inception of LOST 4, this project has been on the list, and as mentioned before, with the opportunities for NERDA funding for loss of public use, staff had recommended that it sit on the unfunded unless and give an opportunity for those alternate funding sources to come through. Option 1, or kind of the simpler option for potential development of this into a public access, would be to utilize the existing or previously existing asphalt area. It was a 50 parking space parking lot associated with the condo. Depending on the existing condition of asphalt and whatever final design looks like, my best estimates is we would be able to fit somewhere between 28 and 46 parking spaces. Once again, it just comes down to what that final design looks like. I will have to develop a management plan for the parcel once we know where we're going, and get that approved by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That total process from me initiating that plan to getting service approval is anticipated to be somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks. And once again, as we've heard several times, we would recommend a conditional use approval be obtained for it. Those steps include removing the sand from the existing asphalt, and we need to determine what deficiencies may be there and what a plan would be to address it. And we would, depending on the complexity of the access, would depend on how much of a process we would need through development services to get approved, whether it's something as simple as the parking lot striping, as you've spoken, or certainly there would be some amount of review to make sure that for access management that ambulances would be able to turn around, and we were fully ADA compliant since there's federal monies within the acquisition. On the simple form, we would anticipate that we would have some form of split rail fence to work as a physical barrier to minimize conflicts between people and species of concern, a dune walkover to get folks over the dunes, and sanitary facilities. The option 2 is ultimately what would be an access that would be more similar to Perdita Key State Park or Park West, that would have a larger restroom facilities, picnic pavilions, things of that nature. It would utilize the area that is hashed on this, that's just to the south of the parking lot area. Kind of the slope on it is it would have to go through a normal development review committee approval and meet all of the current county standards. And additionally, it would be required to go through the county habitat conservation plan permitting, which would trigger a one-time fee that would be somewhere up to about $40,000 and an annual reoccurring fee of $201 per parking space. And with that, that concludes staff's presentation, and we would like to hear from the board.
Okay. Commissioner Underhill, then Commissioner Berry.
Thank you very much. One of the most important things to keep in mind, and was not being discussed here so far, is the very significant change in the direction that Escambia County took with regard to the development of Perdido Key in 2015, and that was the adoption, the 5-0 adoption of the Perdido Key Master Plan. I have actually sat here and talked to the point that I was quite sure that I had lost the attention of my peers a number of times, talking about what the Perdido Key Master Plan meant and what the realities were on Perdido Key. Very, very different than what folks here on the board had heard for so long. For so long prior to 2014, what you had heard was that whatever Pensacola Beach wants, we need to get one of those out there, and there are always these comparisons between the two islands, when in fact they are very, very dissimilar. The passage of the Perdido Key Master Plan was a seminal moment that changed the entire direction that this board has taken with regard to the development of Perdido Key. That was something that we had discussed extensively. It's something I very much enjoyed the unanimous support of this board on, and it was very detailed. Now, I don't know to what extent that for those that have so much else to do other than worry about Perdido Key, I don't know to what extent you recognize the very significant sea change of the Perdido Key Master Plan. In the Perdido Key, so the acquisition of this property is something that was done prior to the master plan. The master plan very specifically was designed to ensure harmony between the property owner on the key, the day visitor on the key, the tourist, every one of the various types of people that use the island. And one of the significant conversations that was had during the development of the Perdido Key Master Plan was, as the rest of the county grows, and that would be your constituents, how do we make sure that we are constantly ensuring access to the beach? Now, as we see, we've got roughly 7,000 rooftops up in the Beulah area that are permitted and not yet under construction, and that is really just the tip of the iceberg, as most people know. We have the next leg of the Blue Angel Parkway as we move north, getting that advanced. And Jeff, as you know, I know that that's the last leg that's in my district. But as I said, when you guys voted to move that forward, you will have my continued support for it. So as you see that change, and now I'm looking out into the out years, where the west side and northwest side of the county is very populated, Pensacola Beach, very, very close to hitting its capacity of what we're able to handle there. We are going to see more and more people coming to Perdido Key. However, today, We have 550 parking spots on the island that range from free to $20 a car. Just off island, we have another 250 parking spots that range from free to $3 or $4 in the state park. Now, one of the speakers had mentioned that's not beach access. Well, Big Lagoon State Park was absolutely my beach access when my children were infants. And one of the great things about Pensacola Beach is Mom's Beach, where those who have children who they want to take them to the beach, but the actual surf is not safe for them, that is there for them. And that's so there's the beauty of the way that works is you get to grow with your beach. The beach is there for every aspect of your lifestyle, your life as you evolve. Perdido Key is doing that as well. And there's one of the maps that's down there shows all of the county-owned property that creates water access in and around Perdido Key. So as it stands today, now granted, just like every other beach in Florida, 4th of July weekend, Mother's Day weekend, Memorial Day, Labor Day, it's going to be packed. Just like we're talking about for Pensacola Beach as we start having that discussion about some paid parking, we have some that is free, show up early enough and it's yours. And then we have some that is expensive, and we have some in between as well. So we are already doing on Perdido Key what we have been talking recently on this board about starting to try to evolve to that on Pensacola Beach. Total of 800 parking spots right now in the greater Perdido area that get a citizen access to the water. So while certainly, like every other beach, it's busy during the summertime, we are not at a crisis point on Perdido Key today. When we had this Restore project come forward, and it was said by one of the speakers that these things didn't morph and change and whatnot, that is absolutely inaccurate because, as you guys know, we actually staff took multiple inputs from multiple areas and pooled those things together in some cases. In some cases, the Restore projects changed through the public input portion. So they did, in fact, change. And one of the ways that this project changed, you can look at this map that's over here in front of Madam Attorney. The entire blue area is the area of this Restore project, and here's why that happened. Our Restore project, done by professional staff, ranked very highly, as you would expect it would, because they know how to fill these things out. And this Restore project, the one we finally ended up submitting, ranked number 2 in infrastructure. But there was another one that was put in by a citizen, and that one ended up ranking 59 in infrastructure. And as you read it, there's a lot of the indicators of a layman. But one thing that I did with all of them that affected my district is that regardless, I did everything I could to look beyond the quality of the staffing on it and look for the idea. And inside that idea was this individual had just put in a different address as a location. It says 16319 Perdido Key Drive is the location because it required an address. I would expect numerous locations to be looked at. Now, during my conversations with through that Restore process, and particularly with Tim Day, we are struggling and have always struggled with these very small, and some of the speakers mentioned it, these very small disjointed public accesses. In each one of those cases, we have given the citizens a little bit of something and then said, look, we did something for you. Okay? The objective of the Perdido Key Master Plan was to get away from those disjointed small decisions that create small wins at the expense of a big picture win, and we put it all into one. Started looking at the island and access to the island in its entirety, and that's why that entire area of the island became the range at which we could look at for growing and adding beach access. This was discussed at length with you guys when we actually brought these forward in the Restore project. And I know that I probably rambled on quite a bit, and some of y'all probably checked out while I was doing it, and I can certainly respect that. But it's noteworthy to say that we can't really talk about being surprised with regard to this when at the 2018 March 8th Committee of the Whole, the MYIP update was given to the board, and we specifically said that that money had not yet been granted because we were awaiting property ID. And here's the reason why we were awaiting property ID. Strategic thinking, long-term thinking versus short-term thinking. The reality is that there will never come a time when acquiring beach property is cheaper than it is today. It will never be cheaper than it is today. The focus then has been and the strategy has been to acquire. And I've been in front of you a couple of different times, and you know, bringing you different properties and hoping we're going to be able to get it. Unfortunately, because of the way we have to do this in the public, it makes it very hard to be competitive at the speed of business when we are bound by the speed of government. But this board, in every case where I've brought it, has been very helpful about putting money in there or doing whatever was possible within the realm of legalities to allow Tim to move at the speed of business. It has still been a challenge because we have property values going up, and with property values going up, you know that appraisals are based on the last sales, and therefore we rarely are able to offer the market price because we are bound by the the need for a supermajority if we're going to offer above the appraised value. In every case, and Tim and I work on this extensively, every single parcel, could just about run through every single parcel and who owns it, and what their propensity to sell is. Because we have been working very diligently for 4 years to try to maximize this money, the restore money, to acquire as much as we can. Because if we take the time now to focus on opening, when in fact there are plenty of available parking spots with the exception of a couple of tough weekends, just like every other beach, if we focus on construction now, every dollar that we spend on construction is a dollar we could not spend on acquisition. So the strategy is acquire now while the window of opportunity is tight and closing, and then build out at the rate that the demand requires of it. It's noteworthy that in the last 4 years, Commissioner Berry, you'd mentioned that not even one citizen had come and said, hey, this thing isn't open yet. That's indicative of the fact that there is still access available on the key. So this property, and you've heard a lot of things, how I don't want this thing to open, I'm trying to sell it to a condo, all of those kind of things. None of those things are even remotely true. When the bike path goes in, the bike path is designed to tie all of the key together. Well, once we tie the entire key together, the bike path is on the north side for a reason, because we can get trailheads to that much cheaper on the north side than we can on the south side. Once the bike path goes in, that ties the entire island together in a walkable, bikeable model, which is what the Perdido Key Master Plan calls for. And then a facility like this can be opened as a low-impact use. And in a low-impact use, then that's going to have a very minimal amount of parking, but have the access, which, again, keeping that diversity of access. We want to have high-density beach areas down in the commercial sector, and then those wide-open spaces like we have in the state park at $3 a parking spot, where you can park your car, go over the walkover, and find yourself a spot where you can't hear anybody else talking. That is the strategy that we've been following. Now, the question for us tonight, really, I think that the appropriate thing to do is to just continue on that strategy that this board has been on for 4 years. However, I think that, as I mentioned, that brought this entire discussion up in March, I think we need to redouble our efforts to acquire now. Okay? Because if we do not acquire now, say we take our time and we focus on building this so that we can have a short-term victory now, 10 years from now, nobody will remember that victory. As the crowds continue to grow, as our ability to purchase property continues to diminish, nobody will remember the short-term victory when we have the opportunity to stay this course for a long-term victory. Now, let me talk about the values of those properties. Right now, it's about $10,000 a front foot, $8,500, $10,000 a front foot. Joe wouldn't pay $10,000 a front foot, but so they're running in those kind of numbers. There was a time when the property values out on the key were closer to $30,000 a front foot. So that even now, as the prices are coming up now, and as this window of opportunity is closing, understand that the property values out there now are nowhere near where they were at their peak. So again, the strategy since the master plan was put in place and looking out long term, what is the best thing for Escambia citizens over a long period of time? It is to acquire property now and focus our attention on acquisition while we can and build out as we need to. Now, this property, realistically, I think when Tim and I talked about it, when we looked at the real condition of it, building a quality type of an amenity there, not the porta potty business and all that garbage that you would never get away with out on Pensacola Beach. Building a quality amenity there, by the time you cut out the parking spots necessary for a proper dumpster, not the trash cans that end up blowing all over the place, an ADA accessible bathhouse facility, an ADA accessible ramp, you're going to be down in the 28, maybe 38 at the most range when you realistically, I mean, the 40s numbers are absolutely unrealistic. And so I'm thinking, okay, at $1 million for 30 parking spots, does that make sense? Or does it make sense to spend $1 million to buy new access? The decision that I made, and absolutely stand by it, and I believe the people of Escambia County, when you look at it long term, would agree with that. The decision was to focus our attention on acquisition, not on putting together yet another small one, another small access, repeating the mistakes of the past. Now, we can sit here and talk about outhouses and all that business. You know, we have been through years of this cheap thinking and cheapening our own assets. We have seen what that does when we do that to the citizens. Yeah, you're opening something, but going cheap very rarely gives you a quality product over a long period of time. Outhouses on Perdido Key, we deserve better than that. I wouldn't put that in your districts, and I certainly don't think it's appropriate to put it in mine. Going cheap instead of going quality has been something that this county has done so often that we end up reaping the rewards of that poor action. So if we're going to be talking about putting something there, this talk of, a couple of outhouses and a little bit of this and a little, a stone soup model, Perdido Key deserves a lot better than that. And I will tell you this, gentlemen, Perdido Key gives your citizens much better than that in terms of the access. You see very few strifes and anguish you've not had. I don't know, as far as I know anyway, I would think that you would let me know if one of your constituents came back from Perdido Key saying, I was treated poorly, I didn't have access out there. Commissioner May, this Perdido Key has a very unique place in the culture of our county, and that it has always been the beach for everybody. Even at a time when our society did not allow everybody to go to the beach together. So this quality, any type of a product that you want to put on the ground there, if you go for a low quality product, it is not going to make it past the public discussion period, because the public will absolutely, has already demonstrated, we're looking for a better quality future than the past. So the reason we haven't built here is because acquisition is the smartest thing to do with our money right now. If we fail to acquire now, our children will be asking, why? Why did we not? Because if you just let the market forces take their effects on Perdido Key, it will do to Perdido Key exactly what it has done to all the other beaches, and that is it creates an access for the haves at the expense of the have-nots. I have been dedicated, gentlemen, for 4 years to acquiring more land on that island. That's not really for my constituents because, guys, we live really close to the beach, and so they're the first ones to get to the beach. It's not a 15 or 20-minute or 30-minute drive coming down from your districts as it is for my constituents. We've been dedicated to that as a team, as a board working together for that Perdido Key master plan. And I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, the best action for us to take tonight, if we're to take any action whatsoever, would be to simply send staff back to go ahead and let's get down, because as you said, Stephen, you don't work for me, I don't work for you. These guys work for both of us. Let's get past what my supporters or my opponent's supporters say, and let's get down to what our staff tells us is actually possible. We need to get down into the realm of possible and out of the fantasies of what can or cannot be done. So my recommendation, gentlemen, is no action tonight, and send these guys back to actually sift through all of these things that were said and get us out of the fantasy area and into the realm of what is actually possible on this parcel.
Thank you, Commissioner Berry. You're recognized.
Thank you. And, Commissioner, so three of us were on the board at the time that voted to acquire the property. Is what you're saying that the acquisition, which, I mean, you've handed down the minutes of the motion from the meeting. It clearly said acquisition and access. That's not been what's happened. Is what you're saying that the acquisition and access, the action that we took in 2014, is contradictory to the Perdido Key master plan that was passed in 2015, and that's why nothing has happened out there? Are you saying that our action and intent in 2014 is contradictory to the master plan? Is that what you're saying?
I would not call it contradictory, but I would certainly call it not conducive either.
Well, I mean, if it's not, that sounds like it's contradictory. Okay, so what do you propose to happen, with the property? I mean, the public money that we have on the ground out there right now. What are you proposing?
Well, first of all, the property is doing much of what it was expected to do, and that is that there is from an environmental point of view, it's an absolute home run. My proposal and what I expect will be happening as the bike path goes in and ties in all of these properties together, that this would be a passive use, a low-impact use area, one that could support a small amount of parking, maybe and primarily as a bike stop, if you will, again promoting the bikeable, walkable, because as I said, as we looked at this thing when I first came on board, the real return on investment for building a quality product here is going to be extremely expensive per parking spot. So I see it as a public access. I see it has it's the staging of that, or the timing and tempo of each of the things that brings about the Perdido Key Master Plan. The time and energy, and especially the money spent on this right now, would preclude you from doing an acquisition, or could very well preclude you from doing an acquisition at a time when, as you can see, acquisitions are have been very challenging so far.
So when you say it's functioning as it was intended, I do remember the discussion. What my intent was, what I was voting in support of, when you saw the breakdown of the funding, I considered, the fact that the feds had, 70-something% and we had, a quarter, 26%, that the the Fish and Wildlife were paying for the habitation, for the conservation of the habitat, and that the county money was going into the access. I mean, that is I believe that's in the minutes, and if you go back and watch the meeting, I believe that's going to be the discussion, that our money was going in for access. So while it may be serving the portion that was the 74% of the funds, it's not serving the portion of the 26% of the funds that we had put in. And I would have hoped, if the board action, which clearly you were aware of the action by the time you began serving, if the board action that close to prior to passing of the master plan, that I would have hoped, and I would think my colleagues would expect of me, that at that time, if our previous action was in contradiction, that you would have had a conversation with us saying, look, guys, I appreciate your support for the master plan, but we've got a lot of public money that was put in on this project. This project doesn't really fit this master plan. What do y'all want to do now? I mean, I think that's a fair estimate to, I think it's a fair thing to expect from a colleague that's negotiating in good faith, because we were certainly negotiating in good faith, or the three of us that were up here that voted to buy it, and we didn't get into the details of making sure that was going to happen. We just we had the intent for the 26% to go to access, and we expected that to happen. And if that didn't fit the master plan, I wish that the discussion had been had at that time, and we could have solved, honestly, we could have solved this problem that is some contradiction probably 2 years ago.
Well, one of the important things to keep in mind is that the Chapter 6 grants are not, the 75% for this and 25% for that. That's not actually how that works. It's a 75% matching grant for the purpose of acquiring properties that are that assist communities like ours to achieve the goals of a habitat conservation plan. So, had I been on the board at that time, I would not have pitched the Chapter 6 grant as this whole 25% for public access and 75% for habitat conservation. The entire grant is for habitat conservation. The use of and having some level of public access is not mutually exclusive to that. But that entire narrative about 25% for this and 75% for that is not actually how the verbiage of the grant works. And if that was what was pitched to you when you purchased it, then like I said, certainly that is not how I would have pitched that product. In my opinion, like I said, when I didn't say it's doing 100% of what you thought it was going to do or what was pitched to you when you purchased it, it is in fact delivering on the lion's share of that, which is the benefit to the HCP. That is why the grant was even available. So that is happening. But as I said, if I could spend $1 million and get another 30 parking spots, or I can spend $1 million and get another 100 feet next to one of our existing ones, then and I have been telling you this for 4 years, then what we need to be doing is acquire. And you've heard me pitch that for 4 years' time, very consistent in that messaging, and that messaging is still what's right for the long-term benefit of Escambia County, and particularly of those citizens that live some distance from the beach.
Commissioner Berry, then Commissioner Underhill. Commissioner Robinson.
Commissioner Underhill. So what about the action moving forward with trying to, with jumping through the hoops and figuring out exactly what developing it would take?
Well, that certainly is. There's certainly nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, that's and if that's to be the action of the board, that would certainly get us beyond the point of saying 50 parking spots, maybe 100 parking spots, and all those kind of things, and get us down to what is within the realm of the possible.
And those funds are available. Yeah. That could be used for that 100%. The 147,000 you were talking about, Chips. Or did I misunderstand that as well? That's possible.
In March, I believe it was, we gave a presentation to the board, and in that presentation, we said that project, while it is approved by Treasury and it's in the multi-year implementation plan, we have not submitted the individual application to Treasury yet for those funds until a property is identified, because the way it's written in the MYP is it could be for any property. So if the board were to say to staff to go ahead and secure those funds for this particular piece of property, we could then submit that individual application, and probably within 3 or 4 months we could have those funds secured.
And that would provide the product of the equation, saying, okay, Escambia County, if you wanted to do X, Y, and Z, then this is what you would have to do. I mean, would that actually accomplish something? I'm genuinely asking. I mean, it's okay if you tell me that's not going to accomplish anything, then I don't want to do that. I mean, would that accomplish what we're talking about trying to accomplish, to figure out what we would need to do to develop it?
That $147,000 would then be used for the planning, the design, the engineering, and the permitting to see what would be the best use of that property and how we can maximize the use of that property.
Let me interject one thing, because I've been very quiet on this. Could we use that 147 to do the planning for option 1 while we wait for the full grant to upgrade to option 2? Because, I mean, look, if we let perfect be the enemy of the good, we're never going to do anything with this property. It's sitting there 5 years. People are walking all over the dunes, crushing the mice, right? There's no signs there. There's nothing there. The perfect cannot be the enemy of the good. We sit there and we go, we got a Volkswagen up front, but we're not going to drive it. We're going to wait till we get a Cadillac. You can't do that. People, and listen, guys, I've listened, and I'm over here dying. I went out there 2 Sundays ago. Again, let me reiterate what I saw. Access number 1, 60 feet. Cars stacked and racked, most of them from out of state, probably staying at the condos, overflowing. And our people were stacked on that 60-foot piece of beach with ropes on either side and cops right there saying you can't go. And we're sitting on 300 feet that would more than double Perdido Key. And we're arguing over $100,000.
No, Jeff,
I want to know if that 147...
That's a misstatement, Jeff.
Listen, I've got the floor. I want to know if that 147 would allow us to plan for option 1 while we wait for additional money to fix it and make it better.
Commissioner, I would suggest that you task staff with bringing back 2 options to the board. With that $147,000, we bring you back a Chevrolet and we bring you back a Cadillac.
Well, and I think, but I don't want to wait for the Cadillac. I want the Chevy, and then when I get the Cadillac, we trade it in, right? I mean, that's what we would do in real life, right? You don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? So we've talked about this. We've beat it around. Look, Doug, I want to say one thing to you. This is not political. I grew up here, man. I used to go to those beaches with my dad, up and down those beaches. When I went out there 2 Sundays ago, and it was depressing, and I saw people racked and stacked in our lots, and there was no place for them to go. And I can tell you, I'm sure Johnson's Beach had a lot of open spots, but some of these folks are very, very poor. They were out there with homemade food that they were bringing from home. I want to open up the 300 feet we already paid $3.1 million for by any means necessary. Now, I respect your master plan. You can do both. It's not a binary choice. You can do both. We've heard from Horace. We get a conditional use permit, and we go through the BOA. We can do both. We can do both.
No.
So I'll tell you, the best course of action tonight would be tell us, say, okay, let's move forward with the planning. Let's get this off a dead center. You don't have to make drastic action, but get them started on the planning, and then we can move forward.
Now, Jeff, the best decision tonight would not, in fact, be to be talking. I mean, now you're talking about option 2. Where
No,
you're
I'm talking about option 1. I've never said option.
But I mean, in preparation for option 2 is a major beach mouse habitat impact, so that shouldn't even be part of the discussion.
I'm talking about your big cabana bathroom and everything else you want. I'm talking about option 1, porta potties that have been donated, labor that's donated. Let's get this 300-foot open for the people, and when we get money, then we build the better one.
Jeff, we have heard that so much in Escambia County.
I mean, am I?
All right, Jeff, I want to answer to it.
Okay, please.
We've heard that so much in Escambia County. Tomorrow, I'm going to get up and I'm going to take my kid to FSU. He's graduated. He just graduated from high school here after having gone to all 12 years. All 12 years, he's going to school in a trailer park, in mobile homes, in temporary lodging. All 12 years, I as a parent have been told by the school board and by the superintendent that we were going to get schools. We were going to get appropriate facilities. The problem with this idea and the metaphor that you just used, which I really can't even begin to repeat, the problem is we always do the cheap and we promise the good and we never deliver on the good.
I don't agree with that at all. Look, I don't agree with that at all. I was out at Pensacola Beach. I go out there every week to play tennis. There's a parking lot very near to Portofino, and guess what's in that parking lot? A porta potty. It's a handicap port. There's handicap porta potties at Pensacola Beach. Go out there and go look at it. I go there every week. I don't use it, but it's there. I mean, it's there till we build the nice bathroom. But meanwhile, you keep it locked up so only a few people can use it. I don't understand the logic. Do I have to contribute District 1 money to get this open? Because my district goes all the way to Perdido Bay, and my constituents, that's the closest beach access for them. I mean, what do we got to do to get $100,000, $200,000 to get this thing going, to get it off a dead center? Let's do the planning, Doug. Let's just start the planning.
$100,000 for planning on something when we don't even know, have a concept of how much could fit there. The reality is, gentlemen, we can do this. We can get an idea of what would actually fit just by giving staff the direction to show us what's within the realm of possibility and bring it back.
The chair would entertain a motion on that,
If we're
Doug.
looking at something like...
It doesn't even need to be a motion. We made a motion years ago.
Then let's
it
do
was
it.
26% and 74%. I mean, we have a professional staff. I mean,
let's do
we're
it
tongue
then.
wrestling all night about something that's been voted
I want
on for
motion.
years.
I want motion on this.
I'm not.
There's no motion necessary.
Why?
The staff can simply take all of this information, whittle it down into what's actually possible, get an assessment of the asphalt, find out if in fact that you're going to end up backed up against the wall in a lawsuit with regard to clearing the asphalt, all of those kind of things. The staff can do all of those things.
What sort of direction? They need direction. They need
Jeff,
direction.
I'm with you. I voted for public access.
Yeah.
I remember. It was a 26% access.
Well,
I'm going to support Doug. Doug wants to go buy more land. We're going to buy more land. I expect when a motion has been made, that the direction that we gave with that 3 years ago is the direction which staff should have gone. Yeah. And so I'm not going to sit here and make another motion. I mean, we're not going to do that.
Well,
I mean that's redundant.
Well, if we don't do anything, Lumen, that sits there locked up.
Council has just clearly said to us that 26% was for public access, and 74%, that's what the motion was.
How do we get it off the...
Well, staff should just be coming back to us. He just said he has to go to Fish and Wildlife. He has to come back with a plan. Staff should be doing it. It should have been here. I agree with you, Stephen. I got caught idle. It should have been done. The information
But here's the
should have been
critical
back.
key. They need direction. They're going to leave this meeting without direction. Jack, what direction would we
I don't know
need?
which more direction they need other than that motion.
Well, I mean, we got kind of caught on a tangent. Jack,
Sure, I'm not on a tangent. I'm tired. I'm ready to go. I'm tired of talking.
We're almost
about it.
done.
I can do it. I mean, we can do it with board's consensus just to move ahead with the planning.
Okay.
Done and done. Grover?
Well, again, I'd wanted to say something. I'd wanted to say, I think at the end of the day, that was our original motion. I was here. I was part of 3 members that did that. I think at this point we got to be doing that. I mean, if something else comes up in the meantime and you can do something else with it, you can do a number of things. But there's NERDA money. There's a variety of things, but you won't know any of it until you start doing the planning. So I think you've got to move that forward. I also want to be very, very clear, Randy. My issue on this was I did not think. I mean, this could have easily been done the first meeting in September. I mean, to do it now, there is some part of it. I mean, I spent a whole year with an individual who came up and showed every board meeting and talked about trees getting chopped down, so much so that I still get jokes about it when it was not even anything that Escambia County did. It was DOT. But I had to deal with that for a whole campaign season. I didn't like having to deal with that. I don't think it's fair. That's all I'm simply saying from a timing standpoint. And I just want to clarify my position that I said. But my position on this, I voted for it 4 years ago to move forward with access. As Lumen said, I'm exactly where Lumen is on this. I don't know why we need to do anything on it. It's already there. We've already said it. It needs to happen. I just don't like something becoming a part of a process. I didn't like the I-10 scenic highway entrance, what was done to me for a whole year. I don't like seeing that done to anybody because it's not right.
Hey, whoa, hang on. You want to call him up, Grover? Do you want to call him up?
No. No.
Hang on.
Randy, we can talk about it anytime. You brought it up. I wanted to comment to it and my comment on that. But I will talk to you anytime.
Sir.
I will talk to you anytime online. I'll be happy to.
I just want to know where we're at, and I want to ask Tim and Chips where we're at before we leave this topic and finish our agenda. What action are you going to take based upon our conversation?
Staff is going to do an assessment of the property, and we're going to come back to the board with a conceptual idea of what can go on that
Cadillac? A Chevy and a Cadillac?
That would be my suggestion.
Okay,
we
and
come back with two options.
Are you going to start that planning thing that takes 4 weeks? That's part of it, right? Okay.
If the commissioners want us to submit the individual application to Treasury to access the $147,000 for design, engineering, and permitting, then you could give us that direction and we can start that process.
I think we need to do it, guys.
We're not ready for that process because we don't even know what we've actually got to offer. I think that we go ahead and do and let the staff assess this so we get it out of the realm of podium talk and down to staff talk, and only then should we actually go there. Because if you're saying go ahead and go for that money, and then this turns out to be not a cost-effective use of that money, then we're going to end up having to go and backpedal with them. Staff can very easily come up with, within a couple of weeks, month most, you should be able to do an assessment and find out what is in the realm of possibility. If it's in the realm of possibility, then we go ahead and knock out the other steps. It's the end of summer, folks. Nobody is there. There's no sense in trying to get into it in a rush. That's what actually has got us to this point that we're at now. Quite frankly, you can very easily have these guys put together some real facts about what could actually happen, and then bring it to the board and see if it's something.
I just want to know what we're going to get in a month. I want to know what we're going to get in a month, and in a month from now, Doug, if they come back and say, "Look, we can open it for $200,000," are you going to support it?
I will see what they bring back. Okay. Keep in mind, whereas it's a new thing for you, Jeff, it is not at all new for me. I am very familiar with this lot and the limitations of the HCP.
So what exactly are you guys, again, I hate to be redundant, but
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask, I don't need another vague presentation by staff. What I do need is what I promised the voters when I voted.
Exactly.
26%.
Yep.
And I don't care how you get there. He can go to Mobile, he can go to Missouri.
Right.
He needs to get to 26 and
I
74.
appreciate that, Lumen, but I want to hear it. I appreciate
It's not
that.
my job to do their technical job. They get paid a lot of money.
I get it.
I'm exactly where Lumen is.
It's not my expertise.
But I want to know what we're going to bring. It's going to come back to us next month. What exactly is coming back to us next month?
We're going to come back to you with an assessment of the property.
Okay.
And we are going to have two conceptual designs that will show two good options for you.
And a path forward if we choose to take it.
And a path forward.
Okay, that satisfies me. Does that satisfy you guys?
If we can end this vague discussion, I'll be satisfied as long as we get 26%. I mean, honestly.
Well,
I'm
all
done.
I know is Lumen's already got it set. He's already got Robertson Curtis who's going to come in and donate whatever they need. Just like anybody else can find another piece of property. So
all right.
They say they'll donate. Bring it on.
Great discussion. Thank you. Okay, we can move forward now. Unless there's any other discussion on this topic. All right, we're going to backtrack. We need to take